So let's start at the beginning. You were born and raised in Louisville. What was your childhood like, and who were some of the people that inspired your passion for helping others?
I'm a Louisville boy through and through. Grew up JCPS schools, went to Fern Creek High School. I joke all the time. My athletic career peaked in about eighth grade, and I actually just kind of quit playing ball. I actually got cut after freshman year as far as basketball goes, but grew up baseball was definitely my best sport. At a young age, I was surrounded by a lot of good athletes, and especially when I got to high school. I was already witnessing a ton of young athletes that had the ability to play at the next level, but for some reason it wasn't happening. A lot of the guys I looked up to in my neighborhood, a lot of the guys I shared a locker room with, they didn't make it. And at that time, I didn't figure out why. But real quickly, I realized like that our community was very passionate about sports, and that sports was, to be quite honest, a lot of the reason why many of our kids stuck around and stuck with school and were still in school and hadn't dropped out or got out into the streets. So from a young age, I had some great coaches, but at the same time I already realized that while it might not be as a player, that I wanted sports to be a part of my life in some fashion.
You spent more than 10 years teaching in both JCPCS, Jefferson County Public Schools, and for the Archdiocese of Louisville. How did being in the classroom shape your perspective on young people?
So, I while I was in college, I had a cousin that was coaching. His name's Joey Hornback. He was coaching at DeSales High School. It was a really good team, and I got on as their freshman and JV coach when I was 21 years old. I'd went to UK for college, had a little too much fun in Lexington, had to go back home, and was at U of L, lost with nothing to do, and got this coaching job at DeSales. And pretty soon, I realized coaching wasn't going to pay the bills, so I started subbing at JCPS. So, I had my toe in the water, and I got my first teaching job at Myers Middle School. And Myers Middle School is a school that the state eventually shut down due to test scores, violence, behavior. But, I was a PE and health teacher, and people don't leave those positions. You got football coaches that have had those jobs for 20, 30 years. They're not going to leave. So I had to take what I could get. So when I got to Myers, I'll never forget my first day. I walked in there and everybody was like, man, we haven't had PE in like 10 years. And I'm like, what? What kind of middle school don't have PE? And the reason being was that, I mean, it was just chaos. At that time, they had 7 West End buses that would come to that school, and they were from rival neighborhoods. The Victory Park area had always went to Myers, but recently they had added the California Park area, Shag Park, which is the Shively area, and all these kids didn't get along. And JCPS was kind of putting this school in a position to fail. But when I walked in, what I'm seeing a bunch of kids that can be saved because they love sports. And can I use sports as a tool to get them to avoid the streets for as long as possible? So that first year teaching, my eighth grade group was like Devontae Parker, and there was another kid named Mo Hendricks that played at J Town. There was like 5 or 6 people that played college athletes. But soon thereafter, what we had was a bunch of just kids that were from the hood that were just struggling, and they were behind. They were struggling with reading, they were struggling with behavior, they didn't know how to express their emotions. And so, what I kind of started realizing is the more we could keep them involved in athletics, the more that we were able to keep them on the straight and narrow. So, I'm coaching at DeSales, and then I'm teaching at Myers. So you go to Catholic school, and then I'm in a public school, and then I got the invitation to go back to my alma mater to coach, which was Fern Creek High School. And I'll never forget, I was young, so I knew a lot of these kids and their families, especially my Newberg kids. And I remember walking in when they were kind of trying to say, hey, leave the sales, come over and coach with us. And I walked in a gym class, and there was kids in there tearing the rim off, just 360, and I'm sitting there salivating like, dang, it's our team. They were like, no, don't get your hopes up. That kid's 17 and he's in a ninth grade homeroom, or that kid right there can't stay not suspended for a few weeks. So I'm really starting to see like that we could have used sports as a tool to keep these kids in school. And some of these kids were so far behind. So it really let me know that we had to catch them earlier. We had to start this earlier. Like, hey, you want the sports, we can give that to you for free, but you got to give us the academics in turn, because eventually it's going to catch up to you. I mean, you might not be ineligible in middle school, but you get to high school sooner or later, you're going to have a 2.0. You're not going to be able to walk around the building cussing at teachers, fighting. So really, my first teaching job, it put me in a position to really sit there and save some lives. And it was second nature to me because I knew sports could save lives.
Yeah, that's amazing. To be able to, I guess, reward with sports to be able, to avoid the consequences from the behavior and whatever, and reward them with being able to play sports. And how did you get them? How did you get your students or players to understand that, if you play sports and get good grades, that you'll be able to have a future instead of, doing what they were doing on the streets or whatever their family was doing that wasn't working?
I'm a big believer in bringing in people that from all walks of life, that they can hear the story from people that have been through it, people that had D1 offers and ended up incarcerated and did 8 to 10 years and now come out and want to tell their story. I would bring in people from different walks of life. I would provide mentors. I also got a lot of people in that building on board with, hey, let's take sports away. He got in a fight last week. Let's take a game away from him, or let's suspend him for a half and see how that feels. And for a lot of these kids, they'd been so used to literally getting the ball 30 times a game, carrying the ball 30 times a game, or shooting the ball 20 times a game, that there was no repercussions. So when I kind of got the school on board with, hey, man, if we want these kids to pan out down the line, let's start having responsibilities. Let's start having repercussions for their behavior. And, that school Myers, to be honest, like, to be such a crazy place, we had a lot of great young mentors that were in complete save the world mode at that point. We were all in our early 20s, and none of us were married. I didn't have kids. My daughter was just born. And really, we had a group of guys that really built a circle around these kids and said, look, man, we're not going to let you fail. We're going to put this support system around you.
Man, that's amazing. So, I didn't even know this, but you coached basketball for more than 20 years. Said you were at
Mhm.
DeSales, Fern Creek, and Wagner.
Yeah.
Like, what did those lessons that you learned as a coach, like, what did they carry over into your everyday life?
I feel like I was the best of both worlds. I got to the sales, thought I knew a lot about basketball. I didn't know anything as far as X's and O's, as far as scheming, as far as anything like that. The sales was really, for me, basketball 101. It really broke the game down to a science, excuse me, which, as I go further along into my story, that time there was valuable, to where when I got to Fern Creek, when I got to Wagner, and I even ended up coaching middle school girls because, they didn't have a coach. It became about more than just basketball. It became about what goes on outside of the court. And, once you're faced with that, once you're dealing with kids, that the best part of their day is when they're in that school building and when they're at practice, and you don't want to know what faces them when they leave. You don't want to know where the next meal might come from. For me, that right there brought, okay, it's more than just basketball. It let me know that, we're very behind as a city. We're very behind as a school system. It let me know that I needed to do more. That while I might be coaching at Fern Creek, there's a lot of kids out there that could potentially use my help. There's a lot of kids out there that, hey, just because they're not qualifiers, now kids don't got to worry about the ACT. Back then, I know you remember this. I mean, how many kids did we have that were great players that they had a 14 or a 15? And if they didn't have that, Cincinnati would want them, or Clemson would want them. And these kids couldn't qualify. They could not pass that stupid test. So with that being said, finding alternatives, like, hey, just because you didn't make it, let's find you another route. So really, I've always prided myself. I laugh now because, like, I get calls all the time, like, about this old transfer portal in high school, and things like that. And we used to literally pick up the phone and call each other and be like, hey, look, man, I got a kid that's my second string point guard at Wagner. He would probably start at Atherton. Like, let's send him over there. I think he'd be better off with you. Stuff like that don't happen nowadays. Everything now is so about winning and jealousy. But back then, like, we would work together as coaches to get film out to people. We would work together to say, hey, man, there ain't no way this kid's going to qualify. Can we get together and through one of our contacts, make sure they get an opportunity to play at the next level? The game's changed. It's not like that no more. But it really, going from coaching at Catholic school to public school, it was where I needed to be. It was where God wanted me to be. It let me know that I have a gift with working with the at risk population.
So, when did you realize, when you were coaching, when was the point that you realized your calling was bigger than coaching basketball?
So I'm teaching and I'm coaching, and I always in the back of my mind thought about being a scout. But I wanted to go about it the right way. I really wanted to go about it the right way. So I'm somebody that's a lifelong learner. And I reached out to Bob Gibbons, which, if you're listening to this podcast and you don't know who Bob Gibbons is, a lot of people know the Bob Gibbons AAU tournament, but they don't know for years he had 250 D1 schools subscribed to his scouting service. He's kind of the godfather of scouting. And I reached out to him, and he was at an older age, and that year, we had some big AAU tournaments in Louisville. I think we had nationals. I think we might have had Under Armour right when Under Armour was starting. Like, I remember like Moutier being the big thing, PJ Washington, some of them guys being really young. And I reached out and I said, man, you're not covering as much ground as you used to. Like, let me, school me, teach me how to do this. And he had a rating system that was crazy, and it really allowed you to watch a kid for maybe 2 to 3 games over a weekend, but you're observing everything from body language to 3 point percentage to a lot of rebounding stuff and just motor stuff, and really kind of wrap a solid evaluation into 3 to 4 games. I'm a firm believer you can't give an eval on a kid after one game unless they're just a freak, but 3 to 4 games you can if you do it the right way. And so anyway, I reached out to him, and I was kind of an intern for about a year and a half and didn't get paid a dime. And then he got sick and he started sending me on the road. He had me, and he had a guy, I want to say his name's Joe Francisco. He was with ESPN for a while. He's still a scout. He handled the West Coast, and I would handle down south and the East Coast. And I got to travel. And I was able to kind of get out and learn scouting. And after that, I caught the bug, man. I'm sitting there teaching. I'm thinking I can help my local kids I care about so much get a scholarship. And I left coaching altogether. And then, I know when me and you first met, I was with Next Up Recruits, and
Mhm.
Taylor Hicks kind of had just started Next Up, and I was freelancing with NBADraft.net, and I was doing some European scouting, but I was getting to the point where I was making some money scouting. And that's when I went to teach at the Archdiocese, because I was making enough money that it was like, dang, like I might be able to do this full time. And Taylor reached out because he was having issues with Louisville people. Louisville is very close knit. If you're not from Louisville, a lot of times people aren't willing to bring you into the circle. And he was reaching out like, hey, there's some talented kids down there, but I can't get an in. I can't find out what schools they're interested in. I know you know a lot of people down there. Can you help me out? And that's where I began shifting from Bob Gibbons, national scouting, to being the director of scouting for Next Up Recruits with Taylor Hicks, and really, really helping our local kids.
Yeah, I remember when you were working with him. When you were with Bob Givens, like what were some of the biggest lessons that you learned, from him, while, about evaluating talent?
Man, a lot. Shot selection, players not taking games off. Like, just he was really big on don't just show up when everybody's there. This was, yeah, there was mixtapes, but it wasn't 50 cameras around. But this is when it was a big deal for Evan Daniels to be at your game or for
Yeah.
scouts to be at your game. I know you remember them days. And pre-agents being able to come and what it is now. But he was big on like, man, I want to see you dominate all the time. I want to see you dominate all the time. He was big on guarding multiple positions. Some of the stuff, the mid-range game and things like that, he was still kind of a dinosaur on. He wasn't everything's got to be a three-pointer, but I really learned from him, getting there early, watching the kids' body language. How do they treat their teammates? How do they talk to their coaches? Which in AAU, that's big. Like, you got some of these kids that talk crazy to their AAU coach, and I don't think people realize they might have just met each other a couple weeks ago. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
not like they've known this kid since he was in second grade. Especially when you're talking about a kid from Lexington that's playing for a Louisville AU team or whatever. So, I mean, how is this kid reacting to criticism? How is he with officials? But really, he had a rating system, and you would scout a kid, and you would tally up all these ratings, and he'd be like a 91, which is like a mid-major plus. So at the time, let's say Wichita State would have been like top mid-major plus, and you would put it in, you'd be like, damn, man, I thought for sure that kid was like Kentucky or Kansas or Duke, and they weren't, you know what I mean, according to his system. But I used to just get a kick out of going back and looking. Kobe was his highest rated player ever. Kenny Anderson was up there, but then he had a lot of guys that I wish I could think of one or two, but he had a lot of guys. Jared Jack was the one that played at Georgia Tech that I read a scouting report that he was like, this guy will be a 15-year pro. Sure enough, dude was a 15-year pro. More locally, Scott Padgett in Louisville. I went back and read Bob Gibbons' scouting report on Scott Padgett, 10-year pro. When Scott Padgett got kicked out of Kentucky for a year before he came back to play for Tubby, I don't think anybody would have thought 10-year pro. Bob Gibbons had that in high school. He had that down, and I don't think your typical scout would ever see that. So it was just a way. And then he had an advantage, man. That tournament down there, I remember Louisville Magic used to come, but then I remember trying to get like some other Louisville teams to come down there in May, and like that stuff was Peach Jam before Peach Jam. But like, I mean, Peach Jam would be in July, but that was a battleground that there was no shoe circuit. So Adidas teams would be there, Under Armour, and seeing those guys, it was special. That's where really, he was big on down south. I really started building a lot of my JUCO relationships through Mississippi. I would scout these Mississippi AAU teams. I don't know if you remember Rodney Hood that played at Duke and played for the Jazz.
Yeah.
Him, and then there was another guy that passed away. I'm sorry, his name's escaping me, but he had an AAU program in Mississippi as well. I want to say it was MBA, Mississippi Basketball Academy. But like, I would go watch these teams, and man, like their seventh guy would be 6'7", high motor. They'd be raw. But I'm sitting there thinking, like, this is a JUCO's dream. And then that's when I started looking like, damn, there ain't no JUCOs here. Like, they don't have the budget to come down to Sewanee for this tournament. And that's where I'm really in the back of my mind going, this is going to benefit my local kids because I can build these JUCO relationships by saying, hey, listen, man, I just seen this kid that plays for Mississippi Basketball Academy for Coach Omar. He's not going to qualify, but he'd be perfect for you. And slowly but surely, I was building that trust with JUCOs and NAIA schools that when they would eventually come to me asking about Kentucky kids, they trusted my opinion.
Yeah, it takes a while to build that trust,
It
and
does.
the thing, Scott Padgett, for him to, Scott Padgett's a 10-year pro, and I remember Jared Jack as well. Like he was a nice player, um, and like you said about AAU, the kids that I always say don't play down. Like sometimes you'll see kids play against opponents that they think aren't as good as them, and they'll just play down to their level, or won't play as hard. So I get what you're saying on that,
Yeah.
and the Bob Gibbons. it's not like a Nike. So you got to see Nike, Adidas, you got to see all of those, and now
Yeah.
you have to go to the circuits. It's different, and building that trust. You've helped more than 120 players receive scholarships. Roughly in 5 years, like mostly through JUCO. But looking back, what accomplishment are you most proud of? Or is that the one you're most proud of? Probably.
So I remember, when Taylor and I first really got together, and he had his camp rolling, and I told him, I said, I want to do an unsigned senior showcase, and we already had one in Louisville that was a pretty quality event ran by Mike Stennett, who I have a ton of respect for. But I wanted to take it to the next level because I knew with our social media presence and everything, we had the ability to bring in 40 to 50 schools. So my alma mater, Fern Creek, has always been good to me, and they allowed me to start this Sunset Senior Showcase in maybe, I don't know, first year might have been like 2015. I don't fully remember, 2015, 2016, something like that. But people don't really know that first year I invited like Bellarmine, and I invited Center and Georgetown. And I remember like Coach Greg at Center, and even Scotty at Bellarmine being like, Wes, we love the talent in the gym, but these kids got like 14s on the ACT and 1.9s. Like, we can't do that. We can't take them. And so I've realized after year one, which wasn't a flop because we had coaches there, but it wasn't really a success either. And I remember telling Taylor, like, I'm going to have to grind. And he's like, man, this is your event. Like, I don't want nothing to do with it. This is your baby. I'll support you financially. I'll support it. But this is your passion. I want you to do this. And I remember sitting there and being like, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm watching Butler Jamboree at the beginning of the year, and every school in Louisville at that point, Seneca, Doss, Western, they all had at least one kid that could play NAIA ball. This is when the city was loaded. And I'm sitting there watching kids and warm ups, being like, okay, this kid's got some bounce. Let me watch him a little further. And I was never like a backstabber or somebody that went and recruited other people's players or anything. So I'm reaching out to Moore's coach or whoever else at the time. I think about Shedrick Jones at Moore, being one that I'm reaching out going, man, I think you got 4 kids on your team that I can get 4 full JUCO rides. Here's what I need. I need film. And so that whole year I'm blasting out to every JUCO contact. Here's this 6'4" forward, Kendall Jones from Southern. Here's this 6'6" kid, Brandon Trotter from Seneca. Here's a 6'2" point guard, Jaquez Hobbs from Wagner. And I'm blasting out to all these JUCOs. This kid will be at Fern Creek High School for my unsigned senior showcase on March 25th. Let's get here. And before I know it, I got schools, JUCOs from Florida, Louisiana, Texas, California, and they're all showing up, spending damn near their whole recruiting budget. And it grew and it grew and it grew. And then these schools started realizing, hey, Louisville's school system's not that good. Lexington's school system's not that good. And I was talking about this the other day with my guy, Chris Moses. I used to always go to Hoptown. Every year I would drive to Hoptown, spend the night. I would go to Hoptown when Hayworth was there, their open gym. Then I would go to Christian County, and then I would go to University Heights. Sometimes I'd come back up and I'd go to Tillman. And because I knew how many athletes there were in Western Kentucky. And I also know, unfortunately, the majority of them kids didn't qualify. So when I started adding those kids to the equation, and you got Trey Edwards and Jamarion Sharp and guys like that coming into the gym, Jalen Johnson, all of a sudden, like, we've got all our bases covered. And, JUCOs, it was a no-brainer for them. It's funny because a lot of these guys I'm still very close with to this day. I know we're going to talk about Delta. A lot of these guys have been pivotal in paying back how I've helped them to my kids at Delta today. But just Kurt Lewis is a perfect example. I remember him really having a great year at Valley as a senior, and him coming to that event. And Kurt's like 6'3", 220, built like a grown man. I know you remember as like a senior.
Yeah.
And it looked like when people go and they get autographs at a baseball card show, that's what it looked like. We had JUCO college coaches wrapped around Fern Creek High School, and they're getting
Yeah.
2 minutes at a time with Kurt Lewis offering him a scholarship before I cut him off, and the next one comes up. And that's when I realized, man, this is I'm doing something special here, man. I'm saving lives. This is something that a lot of these kids had it have been 6, 7 years previously. Matter of fact, I get a lot of guys from Louisville when I go to the Dirt Bowl, things like that. That'll be like, man, I wish you would have done your unsigned senior showcase in the '90s. And I'm like, man, I was a little kid in the '90s. I'm sorry, but I wish somebody would have, because that an event like that could have benefited a long time ago. And to be honest, the only reason I don't do it today is the portals messed everything up so bad, that it'd be tough to get coaches here like it used to. Now, I still do things. I still talk to college coaches constantly. I still do. I don't get paid for it no more. I still do little open gyms and little workouts where I'll bring in 5 to 6 JUCOs. But the days of us having 90 schools in a gym are over, unfortunately, but for it was a hell of a run. Like, it was a hell of a run, and the amount of lives we saved are amazing.
Yeah, the transfer portal is like it's flipped total recruiting up, and now the new 5 for 5 rule. How do you think
Um,
that's going to affect everything with the
um,
JUCO route and those kids?
I saw a post today on Twitter, and it was a kid that was ranked 76th in the country. I forget who posted it, and they said these were his 5 visits, and it was like Bradley, Davidson, Utah State, all mid majors. And I'm like, damn, I remember when the 75 ranked kid in the country would be ACC and SEC schools. I remember
Yeah.
the 75th kid in the country might have a freaking North Carolina offer. And so to see that, and guess what? The guy that posted that, he was 100% correct. Right now, that is the 75th player in the country's best options. And that just proves how much the game's changed. I highly, highly encourage parents to jump on opportunities. Jeremiah Jackson at St. X, kids like that. There's a handful of kids I think have really helped themselves. I don't know the Bryson Keithley kid at all, but he could be an option, an example of that as well. Hey, you find a fit, you find you're playing D1 ball, you are getting some NIL, you got an opportunity for playing time. Don't wait, because your opportunity will get given to somebody else. Like, it's scary, man. I was hoping that it was about to get better because COVID was finally over. And then now the 5 for 5 thing happened. And I mean, I guess this year's seniors are going to be affected as hard as anybody. But going forward, that's why I don't get on anybody anymore for doing what's best for them, whether that's prep school, whether that's transferring in state. You got to do what you got to do. It's a rat race. I wish I could help like I used to. I get people all the time like, you help my big bro. Like, and I'm way better than he was. And I'm like, you're right. You are way better than he was. But unfortunately, the game's changed. I used to have the ability to call and say, hey, Swick, Southwestern Illinois, I got a guard from Louisville. Like, he can play. He's a good kid, comes from a good family. Give him a shot. And I promise you, Cody, they would take him without ever watching him. Now there ain't a shot in hell that that would happen. I could send film and everything. And I know you know as well as anybody, man, the game's changed, and the kids are the ones that are penalized the worst.
Yeah, high school kids now, like if you get an opportunity, like you
Yeah,
better
take it.
really look at it. It's not you shouldn't be worried about stacking offers. Like if you got an
No.
opportunity, there's an academic program there that you like,
Yeah.
that you need to you really look hard at it,
Yeah.
because recruiting high school kids, those days are over. Like that's the transfer
Yeah.
portal is number one, and then they better really like you. But if you have a fit, you think you fit, then really take it. And
And this
most
is
of the
no knock, and I know this is up your way, but I watched that kid Demarcus Surratt a lot, over the years. I wasn't scouting anymore, but I feel like I caught him random places, tournaments, the king of the bluegrass. And there was a point in time I was like, damn, he's higher than Bellarmine. Like, he is higher than
I thought so.
Bellarmine. And then I'm sitting there thinking now, and I'm like, yeah, he's way higher than Bellarmine a few years back, but maybe that's a fit now. That's just how much it's changed. That's how much it's changed. I would have looked at that kid as like an A10 kid, like 7, 8 years ago.
Yeah, most definitely. I thought so as well. And when I first seen Bellarmine, I was like, but
Right.
with the new rule now, and I think the new rule was basically for football,
Yeah,
um, because the quarterbacks, like, you're making $4 6 million if you come back. You don't make that unless you go pro. You're going first half of
right,
the first round. So
right,
why would you not come back? Like,
right.
you have those guys coming back, but I think it's really affecting basketball to the point of, like, if the prep schools are going to make a huge resurgence. I really believe that because of the high school kids, there's not going to
I
be
do
anywhere to
too.
go. So they're
I
going to
hope
have to go to
JUCO
prep
is able
school.
to capitalize. I think like a year or two from now, you should see the highest level of JUCO ball it's ever been. I would think. Like I think that they should. But you even look at the and I mean he's a friend of mine. But you look at the roster that Briggs has put together in Georgetown. He'd be the first one to tell you, no way in hell he has that roster 5 years ago. Or 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean they are absolutely loaded. There's a plenty of other NAIs like that, and I'm if you're good enough, you can play your way back up. You can definitely do that.
Yeah, I had Coach Casey from Tennessee Wesleyan on the other night,
Good
and
guy,
he was
great guy.
yeah he was talking about that. You used to be able to find players, and he was just talking about you could go with the rosters, and he was like, not anymore. He's like, everybody's with the transfer
Yep,
portal, everybody's loaded, and he was like, NAI, everybody wants to knock NAI ball or whatever, but there's some high level guys in NAIA. He goes, some of them get plucked as preferred walk ons, at
yeah.
D1s, but he's like NAI, and he was just talking about how the transfer portal has affected everything. And most of the opportunities you're talking about were JUCO. Like, do you think like most families overlook junior colleges because it says junior college?
They used to here. Now in Louisville, hardly anybody does. You might get your occasional Trinity or St. X or Mayo kid that kind of thumbs their nose at it. But one thing we were able to do when we started that Unsung Senior Showcase at Next Up was we made it the norm. When Jay Scrub went JUCO, and he's hey, could have went anywhere if he was able to qualify, but that wasn't even looked at as a bad thing. And then I think about kids like Eric Boone and kids like that they were qualifiers. He didn't even have to go. He went. There was a number of kids back then that chose to go JUCO because that was their route to more exposure. So I feel like in Louisville specifically, we don't do that anymore. We are open to JUCO opportunities, but I'm sure other places it's still looked at as a last resort. And I mean, like you said, prep school is gonna have a resurgence, but who can afford that? You know what I mean? Like
Exactly.
they're also going to be able to charge whatever the hell they want to charge because the resources are going to be amazing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's amazing. Like you play your right prep school, you can still have 25 college coaches at your open gym. What public school can you have that at? Nobody anymore.
Yeah, I didn't think about the financials, man.
Yeah.
Going to prep school just as much as going to college, if
Oh
not
my
more.
gosh, if not more. Yeah.
That's crazy. What are some recruiting mistakes you consistently see from the prospects that you've worked with make, like big mistakes?
Parents can be patient. You got to understand, like, if your kid is a junior and they're not getting their opportunity, that's one thing. But you're leaving a great staff and a great opportunity because you don't want to sit as a freshman. It's amazing to me. It's amazing to me the amount of freshmen that attend Ballard, Mayo, St. X, Trinity that aren't willing to wait their turn. Because when that turn comes, and that turn's going to come sooner than it ever has, because these kids are going prep. And you know what I mean? Like when that turn comes, you're going to have the keys to the car in a premium program. So just wait. You'll know when it's not right. You don't got to pull the trigger. Sometimes just let it cook a little bit. Just give it some time. Play your role. Get some minutes off the bench. If you're one of those top schools in Louisville or Lexington and you're getting minutes as a freshman, they think very highly of you. They think
Yes,
very
sir.
highly of you. You never know what's going to happen. You've seen this in the last 2 weeks in Louisville. I mean, these kids are leaving. It's a mass exodus, like give it a shot because you don't know what's going to happen. Don't be so quick. Wait your turn a little bit. And I question all the time, why are you afraid to compete? Why are you afraid to compete? Why are you afraid if you're good enough as a sophomore to beat out that senior? then that's what's going to happen. Yes, you got coaches that are overly loyal, that play favorites, whatever. But in most scenarios, 90% of the time, a coach is going to play a sophomore over a senior if those two players are the same. So given an opportunity. So just and then other than that, I think we all know in this business, and it's becoming more and more how many how many coaches, college coaches, don't touch your kid because of you? How many college coaches don't touch your kid because of you? They stop recruiting them because of your behavior. They stop recruiting them because they know it's you texting the coach back, not the kid. They can tell the difference. They can. I hear it all the time. It is, man, that you got to show some level of independence as a kid, that I'm not going to show up in October and practice starts and I don't play but 8 minutes in the first exhibition game and my dad's going to be calling a Hall of Fame coach. Like, are you freaking kidding me? Like, but that's what we're facing with nowadays because these parents are used to doing this. They're used to being able to contact the coach anytime at all the hours. So just let the cake bake, and at the same time, sometimes allow your kid to make mistakes. I'm guilty of that as a parent myself. My daughter, my 12-year-old. I got three girls. My 12-year-old has experienced very little adversity in her life, and it shows because when I get on her, she breaks down. Now imagine if she was a highly recruited volleyball player. What's going to happen when I send her 900 miles from home and they get on her because she don't know she's got to practice hard all the time. Or her body language sucks because she's coming off the bench for the first time. So you got to allow your kid to show some independence. You can't. They're not recruiting you; they're recruiting your child. And now that they're giving them money, they're really not recruiting you. They're recruiting your child.
Yeah, with that said, like one coach told me one time, he's like, we don't make dentist appointments and we don't hold hands. It's business. So I mean, they call it prep school for a reason. Like you're growing up, but
Yeah,
with parents that act crazy at games or whatever, the coaches look at that as the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Like
yeah,
parents have that behavior, then that's what I can expect that out of that kid if he comes to my program, and
yeah.
I don't want to deal with that.
Yeah, we
They
run
want to
into
be able
that
to.
in Louisville all the time, man. Big thing for me that I used to deal with was, is he going to go to class? And sometimes I used to like be disrespected. Like, that kid's a 3.5 student. What do you mean, is he going to go to class? But that same coach has had a lot of Louisville kids come through there that every time that he wasn't on him 24/7, that kid don't go to class. It's no different now. Where like that's the thing, unfortunately, that it's like, hey, I was in a class and I acted a fool. Now my little brother has that same teacher 3 years from now, and they're like, hey, aren't you Wes's brother? Like, unfortunately, their expectations are going to be lower. But it's the same way. Like, you're doing your kid an injustice.
Yeah, you got to let them do their thing, and like you said, they're getting paid now, so it's really their job interview. Like it's I look at it as these kids are their own business. Like you
Right,
need to let them handle their own things, learn, and deal with somebody that knows what's going on with the situation. Because like you said, if the parents calling or texting, they know if it's a 16, 17, 18 year old compared to a 30-year old. Like
right.
they know. I mean,
Yep.
as much as the kids try to be professional, they know if it's a parent or a child. So
Absolutely.
like, but yeah, man, I think that some of these parents, I think it's a lot to do with social media as well.
It is.
um Social media is like changed like everything so much because everybody wants to do this, and I think that's the problem with being patient, is
Yeah.
wanting to be able to put something on social media,
Yep.
and instead of sitting behind and being that freshman that comes off the bench like, hey, we can go over to this other school and we're going to get all these highlight clips. But what they're not understanding is a coach would rather have a winner over somebody that's scoring 30 on a team that's losing
Yeah.
every year.
And you still got parents that believe that offer that you get as a freshman is real, that lasts for 4 years. It doesn't, it doesn't. Maybe if you're 6'9", 6'10", man, you take that offer on the spot, maybe you're good to go, even if you tear a knee or something like that. But ultimately, no, like these parents see, oh, so and so sent a letter or they offered, and that's your AAU teammate, and you feel like they're even, and then all of a sudden, like you said, you're chasing that. You're chasing that. And the grass is not always greener. And you're not teaching a lesson like this. I mean, that's you got kids now. What are they going to do the rest of their life? Every time they get a boss that they don't like, they're going to quit that job. Every time, like it's just setting them up for a cycle.
Yeah, like just a cycle of the same old, and like I said, it's their job interview and it's whatever, and then with the offers, like I try to tell everyone to run your own race. Like you
Yeah,
can't watch someone else's race and judge your race off that race. Like
right,
you should, if you give 10% of your energy that you're supposed to be giving 100 to, 10% watching this one, you're not giving yourself that 100%. So
yeah,
I know it's hard to do with social media, and you're seeing your AAU teammates doing this and like, but I'm just as good as him. Like, why is this not happening? And you're focusing
right,
on that. And I know
right.
it's really hard because I mean, even adults do it. But yeah, most definitely, you have to run your own race and try not to worry about what other people are doing. But I want to talk about your foundation.
Yeah.
Like, where did the vision for the Delta Foundation, like, where did that begin?
So when I was talking about earlier that I had kids I taught in middle school that we had on the right path, a lot of those same kids, they would graduate, they'd leave Myers Middle and they'd go to, let's say, J Town or Seneca or wherever. And all of a sudden, I'd hear these horror stories about like we had this kid on the right path. We had mentors around them. 2 years later, they're involved in a shooting or they're at camp or incarcerated in a youth facility. And I'm going, what happened? And a lot of times, what would happen was, let's say they go play freshman football and they do their thing, and then grades come out in December, and then all of a sudden for the first time in their life they're ineligible because they've never took school seriously, and there's not a coach West to turn them around or say, hey man, you got to pass social studies, because all of a sudden there's 60 kids on a team rather than 30, and there's 2,000 kids in a high school rather than 500 kids. And so sports would be taken away, and once sports was taken away, that desire to go to school was gone, and
Yeah.
they would drop out, and next thing you know it, they'd be involved in things they shouldn't. They'd grow up too fast, and too many times we never saw them again. And so, with that being said, I started realizing, man, we got to catch these kids early. So, one night it came to me, Delta, developing educated leaders through athletics. And I started reaching out to principals and teachers and counselors, and I'd say, don't give me your best player. Give me the kid that without playing sports won't graduate, and without graduating is going to run the risk of being dead or in jail. And what we're going to do is we're going to put this support system around them. Mentors like Big Brother, Big Sister Foundation, grade checks, summer jobs. And we're going to make it hard on this kid to fail. And so, anyway, it kind of started taking off a little bit in Shawnee High School down here in Louisville. Anybody knows anything about Shawnee knows it's a very at-risk school. It's right by Delta, where our facility is. And Shawnee reached out to me and was like, hey, we want to be a part of Delta. And I said, okay, cool. Like, tell me about the kid. And they were like, no, it ain't just one kid. We want you to take on our whole team. And it was 16 people on a varsity basketball team. And that's where I said, man, look, this thing is taking off on me. And so I said, okay, here's what we'll do. We'll make it an after school program. So at the time, then your coaches were Deontay Mucker and Norman Ellis, two guys. Anybody in the basketball world down here knows them. No, Deontay has his own gym down here, and Norman coaches at Dolphs. And so, anyway, Norman's kid is a Delta kid now, I'm proud to say. But anyway, with that being said, they said, okay, we'll give you for an hour. So I had these kids from 3 to 4 before varsity practice started. Some days we do study hall, but then I'd bring in guest speakers from all walks of life. I'm talking ex-cons, lawyers, pastors, everybody to tell their story. I would bring in mentors. I'd have them come in and fill out FAFSAs and everything. And all of a sudden, we had a whole group of kids that didn't have any options that were joining the military and and things like that. So I gotta give them a lot of credit. So anyway, kind of starts to take off, and I had a guy that really believed in me. A guy, his name was Ron Turnier, and he reached out to me and he said, "Listen," he said, "my son plays AAU. His son was a player at Trinity, and he said he's got two teammates that have been in a lot of trouble. I don't think they're going to make it. Will you put them in Delta?" And I'll never forget being like, "Man, well, tell me about them." He's like, "They're 18." I'm like, 18. I'm like, damn, like I don't know what I can do, like it's a little older. So anyway, regardless, I ended up something told me to put them in my program. Not only did we get them eligible to play their senior year, they graduated high school. They went on to play JUCO, and both of them are doing fine today. But Mr. Tenier was well off, and he kind of saw the impact we were having, and he said, "Man, what do you want to do with this thing?" And I said, "Man," I said, "here's what I want to do. I want to see these kids more than any nonprofit in the state of Kentucky. I want to do after school programs, summer camps. I want to keep it free. And our motto is going to be nobody touches the court until they touch the classroom." And he said, "What do you need to make that happen?" I said, "I need a gym, and I need classrooms, and I need a kitchen." Because by that point, as a kid, as a teacher and coach and mentor, I knew half the battle is these kids don't eat. And so anyway, he said, "I got you." And so anyway, Mr. Trenier, he offered to fund 1 year of my program. And so anyway, I ended up reaching out, and a lot of the people that I'd taught at Myers Middle and everywhere else, they were old enough now that they had small kids. And I said, "Coach West," some of them call me Coach Hinton, my last name, most of them call me Coach West. "Coach West is going to run a books and basketball summer camp. And your child's going to get an hour and a half of reading and literacy. They're going to get basketball training. I got a Dare to Care food contract. So they're going to get breakfast and lunch. And we're going to do this free summer camp." And, when I opened the doors that first day, and the place was a dump at the time, there was 50 kids out there waiting. And it was like start your engines, and we were off. And so anyway, it starts going well, and then COVID hits. And Mr. Chenier, who had offered to fund my program for a year, he owns a business called Creation Gardens, or What Chefs Want. And he calls me, he's like, "Wes," he said, "I'm laying off like 800 of my own people. It wouldn't be right for me to keep taking care of Delta when I'm laying off my own employees." And my wife had already let me quit my job and go full time with this. And I'm like, "Damn, man, like it's over before it started." At that time, we had started, so went from books and basketball, which is a summer camp, to hoops and homework, which is the after school program, right? So anyway, I laid around depressed for about a month, like I didn't know what I was gonna do. And Bashir, remember when Bashir used to do his like 5 o'clock meeting during COVID, and I heard
Yeah.
Bashir, I'm laying there literally in bed depressed, and Bashir said, "Listen," he said, "You can have like 10 kids." He said, "Attention community centers, you can have 10 kids within so many feet." So I started looking at blueprints, and I'm like, I think that means 30 kids. So everybody's like, "Oh, you're going to bring back hoops and homework." No, because at that time, all I'm hearing is JCPS teachers complain that kids from the West End of Louisville, our most violent area in Louisville, weren't logging into their NTI. They weren't logging into their online school. Could have been for a variety of reasons. Their computer got taken, no internet access. There could have been nobody's there to wake them up in the morning. And I said, "We're not going to do that. We're going to have school at Delta." So I've reached out to anybody that came to a Delta program, and I said, "Bring your child. If they got a laptop, bring it." I remember reaching out to Dare to Care. I said, "Listen, we're going to have school at Delta." And they were like, "What? Are you crazy?" They were like, "Only nonprofits are doing virtual services." I'm like, "I don't have virtual type kids. Like, I'm going to lose these kids." I said, "Okay, if you come pick them up every day, we'll send you box lunches." So I'm going to get box lunches. So all of a sudden, we went from 20 to 30 I got 60 kids at this time. They're not even touching a basketball. They're just got headphones on and they're in desks all on this court at Delta. So anyway, I thought that was going to last a few months. It lasted damn near a year and a half, you know. But what it did was a lot of the doors from funders and people that fund nonprofits and grantees, a lot of the doors that were originally shut because they're not like me and you a lot of times. They can't see the correlation between how being involved in sports can make you a better student, can improve behavior, can make you a better person. Like all of a sudden now the key word is wellness. Everybody's talking about wellness. And now they're seeing, like, I'm able to say, come here and look at this. And they're walking and seeing all these kids that would have probably never even logged into a class. They're not only logging in, but all their work's done. And like we got this school happening. So anyway, my funding went from like 50K to like 450K in a year. And people really started seeing, like, one, they're doing this for free. Two, they have their own facility, which is huge because I'm not like, there's a lot of great
Uh,
nonprofits that go school to school, church to church, but all it takes is a new pastor, a new principal, and you're out, right? Like they don't know you. So having your own place. So anyway, long story short, by the time school comes back up and we get back to some normalcy, Delta's rolling. Delta's doing great. So anyway, fast forward to about 2024. This is probably like August of 24. The guy that had owned the building, so Delta was housed and is still housed at the old Portland Christian School, part of West Louisville, 2508 Portland Avenue. So I had a gym and I got 3 classrooms up top. And then we had a kitchen. And so, anyway, the guy that owned the building was like, hey, I'm selling the building to a hair school. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, okay. I'm like, so what does that mean for us? He said, they won't want nothing to do with the gym area. And I was like, cool. All right, that's great. Give me the lady's number. I couldn't get a hold of her. And I start feeling more and more uncomfortable. At this point, we're serving 200 kids a year. These are kids that rely on us, not just for after school programs, summer camps, and they get a turkey at Thanksgiving, a ham at Christmas. They get grade checks. They get all kinds of stuff. Like we're a full 365 days a year mentorship program. And so anyway, I said, man, I said, look, I said, why don't you give me enough time to raise money to buy this building? And I said, how much you asking? And he said 1.2 million. And I was like, I don't know if I can do it. So anyway, I ended up, and I tell this story because, like, don't ever give up. I ended up, it took me about 3 months to even raise $100,000. And then I got a donation. They got me up to like 300,000. And the guy that owned the building, he was at a derby party with a lady named Mason Ramel. And Mason Ramel is the head of the J. Graham Brown Foundation, which J. Graham Brown is all over hospitals and Louisville's campus and a big, wealthy organization in Louisville. And she said, hey, I'm sorry I had to turn Delta down. I had to turn West down, but he only had like $50,000 raised. So the owner of the building, his name's Gil Holland. Gil was like, well, he's got 300 raised now. She was like, really? She said, do me a favor, have him call me. So I called her, and I'm a big person on come see it. I don't need to meet you at Starbucks and tell you about it. Come at 3:30 and see kids that their teachers have trouble keeping them in a desk, but we're able to have them learning, reading, participating in sports, showing sportsmanship, taking care of younger classmates. We're able to like have these kids on the right track. Come see it. So she comes and sees it. And she was like, man, I don't normally do this, but I'm going to give you the opportunity to speak to my board. So I got on virtually and I spoke to the board, and they ended up giving like $300,000. And so anyway, you never know who you're talking to. And one of the people on that virtual board meeting was Junior Bridgman. And Junior Bridgman, many people know from Louisville, from the basketball world, but he's also, I believe at his death, he was like one of 7 Black billionaires in the United States. And Junior Bridgman's secretary reached out and said, hey, Mr. Bridgman was moved by your speech. He would like to come visit. And I'll never forget, he comes and he visits Delta and he shows up and he's like, "Where's the kids at?" And it's like, "Oh, it's around now. It's like August 10th." And I'm like, "They're at school." And he's like, "Man," he said, "Man, I was really hoping to see it in action." And I'm sitting there basically begging him to stick around. He's like, "Okay." And I'm sitting here in this office, this little dinky office I still have to this day at Delta, sitting here having this conversation with this man. And anyway, he stuck around. We had kids show up. He asked them some questions. He walked around and he looked at me and he was like, "How much do you need to make this happen?" And I was like, "We're going to lose this building if I don't get 250 grand." And he was like, "Done." And right then and there, he pledged 250,000. We were able to buy the building. And so when I bought the building, Delta still only kind of really needs three classrooms, a kitchen, and a court. And now I got this whole school. And I really started to think back and be like, man, like, there's a lot of great nonprofits that were in the same spot at Delta. If they had brick and mortar around them, their funding would go up, they would be sustainable. And I'm like, what if we, instead of Delta Foundation, what if we make this the Delta Center? So you got Delta Foundation, which has after school programs, summer camps, focuses on education and sports. What if we fill this building with an organization that teaches trades, with an organization that teaches culinary, with art, with music, with financial literacy? And so before you know it, we kind of started recruiting nonprofits. And where we sit there today, the Delta Foundation has became the Delta Center. And so, in addition to Delta, we have 10 other nonprofits that are awesome, that offer amazing resources. We have a food and clothing bank. You come down there on a Thursday, you'll have people wrapped around the whole block, getting food and clothes. They got like a job interview rack, which I think is awesome for people in the community that might not have a tie or whatever to go in a job interview. They come and get it,
That's awesome.
but we've built this amazing center down there. We own our building, which is huge because right now is a very tough time for nonprofits with the political landscape and everything else. There's no federal grants. So, that fact that not only are we offering amazing services, not only do we have amazing tenants and community partners, but we ain't going nowhere. Like, it's ours.
That's awesome. I didn't know you added all the other nonprofits. Um,
Yeah.
why do you think collaborating with the other nonprofits is so important for the people there?
It has to make sense. A lot of people preach collaboration, but too many times the collaboration is you doing all the work and somebody else putting their name on a flyer. So for me, it was very important to be intentional. And so one of my biggest things with Delta was when our kids, when you get seventh and eighth grade, you start becoming too cool to come to after school programs or summer camps. And then where do we go? So I really wanted to provide resources for our kids as they age out of Delta's programs, as they age out of our leagues and our after school programs. So anyway, like the ACE project, who's in the back, they teach trades. We got they teach drywall, they teach carpentry, a lot of different woodwork. And a lot of the kids that I'm busting my ass to get them through middle school and high school, college might not be an option, but these same kids are very hands on learners, they're visual learners, and they can go back there in the wood shop and they can, be an apprentice at 18 years old and at 19 years old be making $35,000, And so that we did the same thing with It Takes a Village, who teaches culinary. A lot of our young ladies in our program have taken advantage of the culinary option, but really finding a way to do two things. One, keep these kids in our program one way or another by providing them resources, keeping them on campus, giving them a safe place to go. But then the other flip side of that is, what about the brothers and sisters? I got a mom that don't have a car, or she has to be at work at a time, and her daughter's not into sports. Now, all of a sudden, you might not be into sports, but you are into art. And we got somebody that's offering an art summer camp, and like being able to find something for everybody right there on campus, to the point where, and I'll give her a shout out. There's a lady named Chandra Stroud. She runs a company called shoot, I'll have to think of it. But anyway, her name is Chandra Stroud. She's awesome, and she does a lot of job placement stuff. And so, anyway, she was like getting elderly people jobs, people that retired, but then realized they didn't have enough Social Security to stay
Yeah.
retired. So they can only work like 20 hours. I didn't realize how big of a deal that was. So now we got somebody in there that is offering, that's finding jobs for a population that people forget about. So literally there's something for everybody in that building. And the best days, the most dope days are the ones where like there's three camps going on. There's a first time home buyer class going on. There's a food giveaway. Those are the days where you see like all walks of life, all generations, and how positively impacting the community's been because of the Delta Center.
Yeah, that's awesome. I didn't know you had all that, but like I just can't imagine like where this group of people or the people that's you've touched, like where they would be if like that place wasn't in West Louisville. Because I'm not from Louisville, but I went to school down there for a while, man. Portland and like West Louisville is known for like the rough part of Louisville. So I can't imagine like where that group of people like would have went,
Yeah,
or if the Delta Foundation wasn't part of their life in any way. And now you've added all these other things, and like you said, college isn't for everybody, but if you can use your
right.
hands, like, and you can be very successful, with a trade now instead of going to college. So hats off for that. Like, how important you think providing a safe place like your place is, where they feel supported and loved and valued. Like, how how important is that for just people there? But that's important for everybody, right?
Yeah, we literally, I mean, it took we're saving lives. I went to visit an organization in Memphis called MAM, Memphis Athletic Ministries. Memphis and Louisville have a lot of very similarity. They have a lot of similarities. And when I went there, like that was the first time I'd heard that we were crime prevention. And the guy that runs that was like, look at when your kids are with you. They're with you when they get off the bus stop, and they're with you during the summertime. And that's the majority of the time that the shootings are happening. That's the majority of the time that all the issues with teenagers are happening, and they're with you. And that was the first time I realized we're violence prevention. Like we're literally giving these kids something to do to keep them off the streets, and we're keeping them coming back. Our retention level is like 88%. 88% of the kids that are eligible to come back to Delta come back. And so, with that being said, it's huge. They are with us at the times they're most at risk. And that is why it was important to find other trustworthy organizations to take over as they age out of our programs, because they do have a safe space with us. They do have a hot meal with us. I can't tell you how many kids that they wouldn't have dinner if it wasn't for hoops and homework. So, I'm grateful. I'm also grateful to our partners like Carter Elementary is a school that we transport. We go pick up 30 plus kids a day from that school. These are kids that come right to us. They get their homework done. They get basketball. They get a hot meal. We've added culinary. We've added art. We've added all the life skills. Our life skills program is huge at Delta. For teenage boys, that could be dating, drug and alcohol education. For teenage girls, like that could be everything from just self-esteem, and things of that nature. But then we bring it all the way down to little kids, decision making, breathing, how to walk away from situations where your anger gets a hold of you. We've been able to do all of that, but also it takes people to believe in us. And we got a group of parents. A lot of times I have grandparents. I would say 35% of my guardians are grandparents. And like they trust us. They give us the leeway to discipline their children. They probably give us more leeway than they give their teachers. But they know our intentions are good, and they know about our track record.
Yeah, I want to speak on like those kids, like they trust you, right? Because
Yeah,
I was a RTI teacher at a level 3 trauma and behavior hospital.
yep,
And when I first went in there, I thought, hey, I knew what I was doing, and I
yeah,
tried to teach. And you can't. teach a child that you don't have a rapport with. Like you're
Yep.
just you have to like build the rapport before you even try to touch them. Like if they don't trust you, it's not
Yeah.
happening.
Yep.
So you know your retention rate is awesome. And you said that they had to qualify to come back. What do they have to do to qualify to come back?
No, I mean you got to sign up. I will say this one thing we've added is you got to be there at least 2 days a week, and that's to protect us too. We don't want to be used. We want to be able to show that this program works. It's free. Just us and one other organization were the only two organizations in Louisville last year to offer free summer camps for full week summer camps. So in return, we need to see that this is working. If we're getting you tutoring, we need you here 2 days a week. So you got 2 days of tutoring so we can see that reading score go up. We need to be able to show it works. So, you show up at least twice a week. Ideally, you're there 5 days a week. Other than that, we ask that our kids do one community service event a year. We have a Clean Up Portland event where we pick up trash every block of Portland. We're looking at adding some new things. We used to go to soup kitchens. But, for us, I think a lot of times I get calls and they're like, man, what do you mean hoops and homework's full? And we have a database, and oftentimes we'll blast it out to all the kids that are eligible to return. But then you got to remember they're all sharing it with their parents' friends and their cousins and everything. So there's times where people are like, how the hell is your summer camp already free? I can't tell, already full. I can't tell you the last time we've had to go to Facebook and been like, hey, 6 spots left. I wish we had that, but Delta was not designed to be that. We never go above 8 to 1 student to staff ever. So Delta is designed to be 70 kids in the summer, 60 kids in the after school program. We know their grades. If they're screwing up at school, we know their teachers. We can reach out to them. We know their parents by name. It is a family type of atmosphere, but that's why it works. It wasn't designed to be 200 kids coming into a community center playing basketball, hanging out, and getting a meal. It's designed to be an all inclusive mentorship program. So we need to access your grades. You got to give us permission to see that.
Yeah, I guess accountability. Uh,
Accountability.
yeah, so they're learning a lot of life lessons through your center, like
Absolutely.
being responsible, accountability. Um, where do you hope you're at in 5 or 10 years?
Man, so we try to expand. I'm very open when we make mistakes. Like I said, I'm from the Newburgh area. And I always pictured Delta being in Newburgh. And we had an opportunity out there. We got a grant that paid for it, and it went great. Matter of fact, a lot of the top high school basketball players in Louisville came through Delta Newburgh, not Delta West Louisville. But with that being said, I got a call 2 years ago, the first day of school, and the guy that ran the Newburgh Boys and Girls Club said, hey, Wes, I'm resigning. Here's the lady's name that is taking my spot. And I'm like, okay. And I called the lady and she's like, listen, I'm from Detroit. I was brought in here to clean up a mess. She said, I don't know anything about Delta. She said, as of right now, I don't want any vendors here because I got to make this place better. And when it really let me know was, you got to be real careful, like with just expanding, just to expand, just adding programs, just to add programs. You got to make sure that you still are yourself at the core and that you're not losing your values just because you're going for funding or you're trying to add more numbers. And so for me, I don't envision Delta is necessarily expanding to another neighborhood. We own our own facility. We have West Louisville covered. I envision Delta in the next 5 years is growing with things like job placement, with things like kids that have graduated coming back. I'm already seeing that. I had 3 kids this summer that came back and really were volunteers. that are high school juniors and seniors, and they just wanted to pay it forward. Like as soon as summer league ended and high school basketball ended, or even while it was going on, every moment they could, they were at Delta teaching the next generation. I want that to continue. I'm going to be honest. I want the Unsigned Senior Showcase to come back in some sort of fashion. I would love to bring that back. And look, now is it realistic to get 40 kids a scholarship in a year? No, but if we could get five, it'd be worth doing, right?
Yeah.
So I look at that. That's something I would add back. I want to continue to our female population. So at one point, Delta was like 98% African American boys. Um, where we're located, I've tried racially. I just don't attract that many white kids. So I said, man, I need to diversify. I'm going to get girls. So we did a volleyball league, and then the girls came, and it was like, okay, you like the volleyball league, give our after school program a shot. But many of them didn't like basketball. So I was losing them, and I ended up hiring a young lady. Her name's Shantia Towns. She's a former student of mine at Myers Middle School, which we talked about. And I said, man, I need you to come in here and build a curriculum around these girls. Everything as a 24-year-old Black female that you feel like they need to know, let's do it. And I'm going to pour into your resources. And man, they do everything from life skills to doing, they do cosmetology, they do culinary, they're giving them all types of different job training, but more than anything, self-esteem. This is how you should be treated by a male. These are the decisions you need to make as a young lady. These are the dangers of being a young lady and not having a father in your life. And so I would like to continue to grow our female population and have Delta be just as impactful for young ladies of West Louisville as it has been for males.
So you've added the females, and it's just
Yeah,
not
we went
males.
from this is my biggest brag on Delta for real. I told you my biggest brag was the Unsung Senior Showcase. My biggest brag on Delta is now we are 34% female. So we went from like 6%, 4% female to 34. So I'm very proud of that.
Yeah, that's awesome. So before we go over into hoops and homework, like, well, how can businesses or people like in the area or not even in the area like support Delta?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, go to our website, Delta Foundation 502.com. Little stuff like it's not easy. This is free. So when I say every dollar counts, if you give $200, that's going to affect a kid in some way. We are very resourceful. We got a ton of volunteers. We got a lot of organizations that donate school supplies. Snacks are huge. Basketballs are huge. I forgot how many coaching friends I have, and between myself and Ethan, who I know you've had on here as well, we've reached out this summer to so many coaches and been like, look, man, all the help we give you, send us some balls, send us your
Yeah.
old practice balls. But like stuff like that, we go through stuff fast, gas cards. We do transport these kids everywhere. The days of kids getting off a bus stop and walking to an after school program are over. That's something that I've never even really thought about asking for until sitting there talking with you, but gas cards would be big. But all our donations are tax deductible. Anything helps, man. We got to keep this free. I mean, do I have some parents that could pay $30 a month, 30 a week? Yes. But I also know what a lot of our parents go through. And like we've set this precedent of all our resources being free. Let's keep that rolling.
That's awesome. So you were talking about it's hoops and homework. That's in 2 weeks, right?
So Hoops and Homework starts in 2 weeks. That's our after school program. We just wrapped up our summer camp. And yeah, Hoops and Homework is open right now. You can go to our website, get your child signed up. I think we got like 15 spots left. So by the time this posts, I don't know how many we'll have left, but it's an awesome after school program. Your child gets homework assistance, they get tutoring. Every child is required to do 30 minutes a day reading and literacy in the classroom. After that, they get basketball training at no cost. They eat dinner. After dinner, we play games. It's a program that it moves fast, but like it's such an impactful time for these kids to be with us. And we got a lot of kids, truth be told, they might not ever record, they not ever complete a homework assignment if they weren't doing it there, and that's no knock against their parents. People work, people are busy, people have lots of siblings. We know, hey, it's their Google Classroom. So and so's got seven assignments missing, and we're on it to make sure that happens. We're an academics first program. Sports is just the tool that gets most of them in the building.
So why is academics why do you have academics more important than sports?
Because I've seen it. I've seen so many people that had the ability to play at the next level. I've seen people that there's no doubt in my mind could have played professionally at some level, especially football. We talk about basketball, that's my expertise, whatever. Football in Louisville, there's I could name you 30 people that would have had a chance to play on Sundays that never got past their first year of college, even if they've made it there. In Louisville, our more at risk youth play football, not basketball. And so, with that being said, we are a testament to that ball will stop bouncing. Let us find a way to get you through school. Let us find a way to keep being able to play the game you love, but then still have options when you leave.
Yeah, that's a great. You tell a lot of players basketball's in and it's going to end sooner or later, so you're going to need to have that
Yep.
plan B.
Yep.
And if it takes somebody to finally get that instilled into them, like that saves so many people because you can play basketball forever, but when that ends, like, what are you going to do? Like,
Yeah.
then
Lost.
if you've not built up any kind of skills or academics or anything like that or trade like you have,
Yep.
like, what are you going to be doing? Like, and I'm not knocking like a job at McDonald's or somewhere, but if you have a family and kids, like, being able to raise a family, like, what kind of situation are you going to be in?
They're
So that's
lost. Yep.
awesome. So, what do you hope every kid that comes to homework and hoops, like, what do they get out of it beyond basketball?
They get one, they learn how to handle adversity. You get that many kids together, many of which are at risk. They get in trouble in school, and then all of a sudden we're asking them to, you got to pick each other up when you fall down. You got to be willing to pick teams. You got to clean up your cafeteria tables. You got to sit up there for 30 minutes and realize, hey, I'm on a second grade reading level and I'm in fifth. I need to take the help. They're making me take the help. It teaches them to get through adversity. We don't give them the easy way out. And they get to experience things that they never get to experience, little stuff like Kentucky Kingdom, like field trips we take. I remember a time where we were literally just basketball and reading. And this summer, we were blessed to take a field trip every week, and we try to mix it up somewhere culturally, like the Ali Museum, and then somewhere like a trampoline park for fun. But you can really tell your kids that, they don't take that for granted. Those are experiences that are new. So, with that being said, you're going to come out of this with discipline. We're going to make sure that you're going to pass. We're going to make sure that you're going to pass. If you're a kid that gets suspended all the time, we're going to reduce that suspension level, and we're going to build a relationship to where myself, my staff, mom, your coach, your teacher, we all have an open line of communications. We all believe in this. And those are people that would have never even talked to each other before. But now, because you're a part of this program, we can say, hey, Deontay, he didn't show up to school today, or he didn't do his homework the last 2 nights. And we have the ability to reach out to Little League coach, and they're running at practice. And the kid's like, how'd you even know? Like, how did he even know that I missed 2 assignments? Don't worry about how he knows. We've built this support system around you. So, that speaks to the volumes to Louisville being small. As competitive as Louisville can be and as cutthroat as it can be sometimes, for the most part, we do want to see each other succeed. And when people believe in something and believe it's genuine and that there's not a motive behind it, then they support it.
Yeah, most definitely. So throughout your career, you've been a teacher, educator, a coach, and a scout, and a nonprofit. You're a leader. Like, what role has had the greatest impact, probably, on your life?
Definitely what I'm doing now. Definitely my own daughter, my youngest daughter. She's 6. She's a Delta baby. She's my first kid that's really embraced Delta. My other one, my oldest lives in Lexington, and my middle child, she's more of a theater kid than she is sports. But like I'm looking at my own child and I'm looking forward to seeing her progress through Delta. But just the hands-on mentorship, the fact that we're seeing these kids. So I had 48 kids last year that we saw over 150 days. So we're seeing those 48 kids almost as much as they're seeing at school. So you want to talk about impact? You can't make an impact by seeing a kid for 3 weeks, or all of a sudden you take them on a trip or something like that. No, like you want to measure impact. How often are they with you? So when you're talking about these kids being with us more than they're at school in some cases, that really allows you to have an impact that's untouchable. When I was a PE and health teacher and a coach, um, you were gone. Like you might come through my class and I might even have you at class and then at practice, but you were gone. What about these kids that are coming through Delta that we're catching in kindergarten and they're with us all the way to ninth grade? Imagine the opportunity we have. So there's no question that the biggest impact I've made in my life, despite all the kids have helped get scholarships, things of that nature, is the Delta Foundation. There's no question.
So, what legacy do you want people, or hope people remember when they hear your name, Wes Hinton?
Man, that I care about my city. I care about my community. I've never asked for nothing. People know that. Like here, I've never asked for money for nothing. Like I am. I do this because I've been hurt by a lot of people that are no longer here. I've been hurt by a lot of teammates, classmates, students, players that aren't here no more. These streets are unkind. The new thing is the pills. Like so many players I've coached, so many students have dropped dead because they think they're taking a perk and it's not. And that's something that now I'm at funerals constantly. It used to be, because you're getting killed. Now it's for OD. It's fentanyl. And so with that being said, I just want my legacy to be like, man, I cared. It was genuine. And if I ride for you, I'm gonna ride for you forever. I'm always a resource. I'm always here for you.
That's awesome. What you just said, do you guys have like a drug program there to kind of like limit that?
We've added it to our life skills program. Portland is a community unfortunately plagued by drugs, but we've added it to our life skills program, and these kids have already seen too much. They already have, so we have begun to educate these kids on just the dangers of. Unfortunately, like you don't even have the ability to experiment with things like past generations did. It's too scary. It's too dangerous out here. So that about a year and a half ago that became drug and alcohol education became a big part of our curriculum.
Yeah, most definitely. It's like the Wild West out there, and like it doesn't matter if you're in Portland, Louisville, or you're in any part of the
Yep.
country, man. Like it doesn't matter where you're at. Like it's everywhere. So let's have a little fun with the lightning round.
Okay.
Favorite Louisville restaurant.
Favorite Louisville restaurant? Hammerheads.
Favorite gym you've coached in.
Favorite gym I've coached in? The Hoosiers gym. I had the privilege to coach at the Hoosiers gym before in Indiana. Locally, I like Shawnee and Atherton just because the low court and all that. Those are my two probably favorite local courts.
Favorite player you've watched develop.
Ooh, favorite player that I've watched develop. Dang, Raekwon Evans from Valley.
Favorite basketball memory.
Favorite basketball memory. My favorite basketball memory. Um, Man, I've had a lot of great. I got to work LeBron camp 1 year as a coach, and LeBron wasn't even there, but got to sit down at a table. I take that back. It's not that. My favorite memory ever was I worked Bob Huggins camp at Cincinnati when I was 21 years old, and they took all the players out, and the staff, what Cincinnati was Bob Huggins, Frank Martin, Andy Kennedy, and they took us all out as kids, took us a steak dinner. We went out, had a ball. We got to talk basketball and to hear those guys talk stories. Anybody knows Bob Huggins is a good time. Looking back on it, I tell more stories about that night than anything else. Man, and then I ended up working that camp for years to come, and just an awesome dude to be around.
One word that describes Delta.
Loyal.
One life lesson every young athlete needs to hear.
The ball is going to stop bouncing.
If you weren't working in youth development, what career would you have chosen?
I have no idea. I'm not somebody, unfortunately. I don't know if I could have worked at Ford or, man, I worked at Toys R Us. That's the only job I've ever had in my life that wasn't like a coach or a teacher or a mentor. Maybe counselor, maybe like psychiatrist, but I doubt it. I can't imagine my life without teaching, without working with youth. That's what God put me here to do.
Awesome. Before we close out, where can we find Delta and you guys on social media? Can you give out the website?
Yeah, website is deltafoundation502.com. Social media is all at Delta Inc. 502 or at Delta Foundation. We're on everything. We're a Google search away from all those things, Delta Foundation Louisville. But yeah, I encourage you. We got a good website. If you want to volunteer, if you want to donate, I can't tell you enough. It's not easy keeping this free for 200 kids a year. We need all the help you can get. We need all the help we can get. So please, visit our website in any way you can help. We're grateful for.
Yeah, man. Just I can't thank you enough for like joining us tonight. Like this,
Yeah.
this was a really great conversation. I didn't know your journey, but from your journey from educator to coach, you were scout. Now you're founder, the CEO. It's one mission, like to help the youth like reach their full potential, right? And
Yep.
helping, already helping 120, receive JUCO scholarships is incredible in itself. But what you're doing at the Delta Center with adding all those other things is like one of the greatest impacts like I've probably heard. And you're creating like more opportunities like further than basketball. Like you're doing all kinds of
Mhm.
life lessons, and then now you have the hoops and homework program, and then the 10 other nonprofits. Like your commitment to serving West Louisville, I think it's going to create big change for generations to come. Like if you keep going,
I
I
agree.
just want to thank. I'd like to thank you for like everything like you're doing for the city of Louisville and for people in your community because like if they didn't have a program like that, like who knows where they would wind up being. Um, it's no knock on the people there, the parents there, because life's hectic, jobs. There's a lot of things going on. It's 2026, but yeah, man, I just want to like hats off to what you're doing down there. That's awesome. And everybody that's watching, be sure to follow Delta Foundation. Stay updated with the Delta Center, the Hoops and Homework Program, upcoming community events, and their opportunities to volunteer and support the mission. If you enjoyed tonight's conversation, be sure to subscribe to Pure Prospects Podcast. I'll have Delta's links to their social media and their website up. You can follow us on Substack here, connect on Facebook, also Instagram. And for more conversations with coaches, scouts, athletes, and leaders making a difference, both on and off the court. I'm Cody Thomas. Thank you for watching, and we'll see
Appreciate
you
you.
again next time on the podcast. See you later, man. Great convo.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.